we finally have the news. The headline, the official fight to main event UFC 249 is going to be Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight championship. But the location is still unknown. Nobody knows where it's going to be at. They're saying it's going to be somewhere on the west coast of the United States. At least that's what they're hoping is going to happen. They kind of zeroed in that area. We really don't know where. Probably San Francisco. I don't know. That's been talked about before. Wherever it's going to be, this fight is amazing. It's a really good fight. But the fact that Khabib is out of the card officially, it's not only a bummer, but it brings a bit of confusion to the whole thing because Khabib just came out in an interview as well as on Instagram Live, and he said that he will fight as long as he has a location. Now, the UFC doesn't have their location. Does that factor in Khabib not fighting? Because he is kind of stuck in Russia. He can still take a private plane, but he doesn't know where to take that private plane to right now. And it seems like the UFC just went forward. They don't want to deal with the headaches, possibly. I hope they do clarify what happened with the whole Khabib situation, because Khabib did say he will fight and now he's not fighting. But there is no location, which is the thing that he needed to know about in order to fight. So they're still going on and making another main event. They're putting the interim title, and it seems to be kind of not, I wouldn't say a jab at Khabib, but probably in a way to stick it to Khabib pulling out of the fight. Technically speaking, by definition, it is kind of a pullout. Whether it be justified or not is another debate. I believe Khabib not fighting under these circumstances is a pretty good thing. I can understand it. I respect his decision, although I do see it as still a pullout of a fight. This is also a little bit of an insult to Tony Ferguson because they're doing another interim title fight, and Tony never lost his belt in the first place. People still look at him as the interim champion, and he has to go and win that belt again. What they're going to do, strip him after when he has to go and fight Khabib? There is one good thing about it, because in reality, he doesn't actually have the interim title. If he goes and secures it against Justin Gaethje, he also secures his spot to fight Khabib later on in the year after Ramadan. Khabib said he could fight in August or September. That's what he's focusing on. That's what he's predicting. And the interim champion usually, not so much recently, but usually historically, the interim champion gets the crack at the official champion. But when Conor McGregor is in the equation, things change a bit, right? Money talks, and we don't know what's going to happen. If that happens, if they pass up Tony Ferguson, even though he wins the interim championship for Conor McGregor, it's gonna get a lot of fans upset. So hopefully if Tony Ferguson wins on April 18, he goes and gets that fight against Khabib, and hopefully it happens without the world ending, without a meteor like crashing onto the earth. Now, looking at this fight, you could put this in any other scenario. Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje is the epitome of violence, the epitome of action. Two fighters that look for the finish to punish their opponent mentally and physically. Justin Gaethje is going to have the power advantage, right? He has devastating leg kicks, a great countering ability, and a great way to stalk the opponent. But the thing about this is, he has a much shorter reach. His output isn't the same as Tony Ferguson. He has nowhere near the cardio. If this goes past the second round, Tony Ferguson is going to take this 100%. Justin Gaethje doesn't have a full training camp, which is something he doesn't like usually. He has turned down short notice fights in the past, because he always wants a full training camp for a fight. This is a special opportunity for him. And even with a full training camp, Justin Gaethje doesn't have the greatest cardio. And he's fighting probably the best conditioned fighter in UFC history. Now, with that said, the first two rounds are going to be pretty dicey. Wildness and the power that Justin Gaethje brings, he has turned more of a game plan fighter. Recently, you see him not putting himself in the fire as he used to, and he has success with this sort of cerebral method, right? 3 first-round knockouts in a row. But I do not see that Justin Gaethje in this one. I understand he has a great coach in Trevor Whitman, good camp behind him, but he's fighting one of the most unpredictable fighters on the roster right now. And how could he come with a game plan less than 2 weeks from the fight to deal with this guy? Fighters more experienced than Justin Gaethje, who have been around a lot longer, have even trained with Tony Ferguson. They can't even come up with a good game plan for an entire full training camp to deal with this guy. But Justin Gaethje is going to do it under 2 weeks. I have a very hard time believing that. So as a solution, Gaethje is going to come out there like how he knows best, without a game plan, and that is wildness. Looking for the knockout every step of the way, a pedal to the metal kind of approach. Looking for the knockout early and catch Tony Ferguson under the chaos. And that is a high probability of happening. Tony Ferguson, although he is very good at slipping punches, he's very good at moving away from punches in an unorthodox manner, when he gets hit hard. That's the problem here. He doesn't get hit often, but when he gets hit, it usually stumbles him, stuns him, or even drops him. And this is the guy he does not want to get hit by cleanly. One big shot from Justin Gaethje, and it might be all over for Tony Ferguson. Tony's very good at recovering from damage, very good at getting up if he gets knocked down, but Justin Gaethje might be the most powerful puncher in this entire division. And coming out with that wild style, that power is going to be emphasized against Tony Ferguson here. But ultimately, the switching of stances, the jabs especially, Tony Ferguson's a very smart fighter. I guarantee he's going to come up with a better game plan to deal with a more obvious Justin Gaethje than vice versa. The push kicks are going to counter those leg kicks of Justin Gaethje, and I also believe Tony Ferguson is going to be the one that's going to pressure Gaethje backwards. That happens, that's one of the only times in Gaethje's entire career where he's going to be in the back foot at that kind of pace. Yeah, he was on the back foot a little bit against Eddie Alvarez and also a little bit against Dustin Poirier, but this is an entirely different situation. This is an entirely different fighter with a terrifying pace. And I believe Gaethje is going to get progressively desperate as the fight plays out. When he feels the pressure, when he feels the pace, when he feels that intensity that Tony Ferguson brings, it's going to force Justin Gaethje to start covering up, bobbing and weaving, and only looking to counter with those big overhands. I see him getting into his shell, trying to get that shot in under the fire that Tony Ferguson is spewing out there, and hoping to just get that KO before it gets too late. And I do not really see that happening. It's possible, very possible if Tony Ferguson drastic error, but more so unlikely. I see the fight being pretty even in the beginning. I see Tony being a little bit cautious as well as picking up the pace step by step and eventually forcing Gaethje into that shell, and once he gets that view, I believe it's going to be target practice as well as Tony Ferguson countering the counters of Justin Gaethje eventually with that long reach of his. I see Tony Ferguson finishing Justin Gaethje within 3 rounds. And I will make my official prediction video on fight week. I wonder what else is going to be on the card. Is Francis Ngannou going to be fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik? What other fights are intact? What fights are going to be scrapped? Is Rose Namajunas fighting Andrade again? Because that's a fight I really want to see. Now, I understand it's not the same without Khabib. It just isn't. It's going to be a very weird feeling. Although I'm going to enjoy the fights, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to enjoy as much as possible. Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson is one of the best fights you can ever put on. But the circumstances is a little bit unfortunate. I know there's people that are saying that they should scrap the card in general, just scrap it entirely. Some people that say is Khabib or bust. They won't watch anything unless it's Khabib versus Tony Ferguson at the moment. And there's people who just want to see a fight under this whole quarantine thing. So I hope you guys do enjoy if you watch it. And be looking for my prediction video. I'm also going to come out with my podcast tomorrow, so be looking for that as well. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys then.